with me in this day. We are about to talk on a sequence of a great purpose. How many of you have been through life and not understanding some facts that happened with you along all these years? I'm quite sure you have so many stories to tell, but I'm going to tell you now my story, and maybe we can have a amalgamation of heart and mind and purpose. Okay, I was born in Brazil, in the south of Brazil, in a little city called Ibitinga. I was born on a state called São Paulo. Now, what happened was this. The funny part was the fact that when I was born, in that day, they had a very big eclipse or moon conjunction with the sun. Okay, and it was so strong that the cows, pigs, goats, horses went back to the stable, thinking that was already night. And I was born 9:30 in the morning. Okay, many years later, I have been, with the grace and the choosing, I was awarded the American citizenship. And I make a joke out of the situation today that I have two flags. One is the Brazilian flag and the American flag. And I make a joke saying that the Brazilian flag, saw me come to life. And the American flag, is keeping me alive. It's a joke, of course. But anyway, that's the whole idea. And the day that I received the American certificate as American citizen, in that day also, it was moon and sun conjunction. Isn't that funny? I was born in Brazil, and I have what we call it here eclipse. And when I became American citizen, which means I was born again, on that day, it have another moon conjunction with the sun, or eclipse for us. This can be some facts, but I feel that is very unusual anyway. Okay, since childhood, I had feelings that I had a purpose in life, something unusual. And one day, I was already in the city of Londrina. I lived in Ibitinga for 3 years, and then my family moved to Londrina, which was starting to be a city on the jungle of the north of Paraná, which is the place where I am right now. So I was in a house, on a porch. I presume it was like a summertime, and then I was looking at the sky. It was a clear day, I presume around 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon on summertime. And the funny thing was, I was looking up, and all of a sudden I saw a white disc like that. And then it came in close and bang on my face. I was holding into the post on my on the porch, and I was all shook up. And what happened? In my head, imagine when you get a tape, the old VCR tape, and you rewind it, it makes that unusual noise. And all the picture on the TV, on the screen, get all fuzzy. It happened with me. And somehow I felt very strange after that. Now, I was a child, I presume around 8 to no more than 10 years, and I was thinking, what's going on? But somehow I felt that when I would be a little older, I would go to another place and would be speaking with different people. Eventually, I came to the United States. I went to the United States. Now, the funny part is this, that since child, I was sleeping and I used to hear my name, John, John. I would get up and go out of the bed, but nobody was there. So I went back to bed all over again. Now, the interesting part was the fact that this was coming and coming with some time. Then I grew up and I started having a very deep interest in books about science, about space travel, about spiritual things. Now, for a child living in a small town at that time in Brazil, I felt, my goodness, this is unusual. My family was a regular family. My dad used to work a lot. My mom used to take care of 4 children, and nobody had much time to really have a conversation, and the time passed by. One day I was going out near my house. They have a very big, deep place where the water was carving like a canyon type, and it was really deep. I presume it was deeper than the light pole. And I was very childlike type person, and I used to play a lot by myself. And we had one of the things that we used to do was to catch spiders and put inside of a little jar, like pickle jar, and eventually make them to fight against each other, right? So I was looking for my spiders on the cliff. So I got up there, and when I was very high, the whole piece of ground of earth fell over, and I was carrying down like a big, what do you call it, a snow avalanche. Of course it was not snow, it was just plain dirt. And I fell backwards, and I landed down, and this whole block of earth fell over me, but my head was out of the big mountain. Now I could have died right there because I was by myself, and if I stayed inside the ground or the earth, probably they would only find me after I start smelling dead. But anyway, I got up, got myself out of that, cleaned myself the most that I could, and I kept my mouth shut so I would not talk with my family about this. Even today, nobody knows about this. They will know from now. They didn't know about this. So I was involved with so many little details in my childhood, but I kept myself. I had a lot of accidents. I broke a lot of bones. I have some surgery and, things like this. But to me, it looks like something normal, okay? But I still knowing that I had something unusual. As a child, a male child, I used to plant flowers. I used to make a little garden with flowers. And I started getting interested in making bonsais and ikebana. And we play with a ceramic. I was a child. Now, this was very unusual because the other kids in my neighborhood would not be involved with me in this type of a play or game. Now, let's understand one thing. For some reason, I was cut out of the block. I was different. And I do recall one day, I was sleeping, and then I got out of my body, my sleep, and I started going different levels on my ascending body to different levels. And I arrived on a place which was very, very, very beautiful. Lots of children, all playing, healthy looking, beautiful people passing by, laughing, enjoying life. And I was so involved with the children playing, I became their friends right there on the snap. And then all of a sudden, I heard a voice, "It's time for you to go back." I said, "No, I want to stay here." And the voice told me, "No, you must go now because it's not your time to stay here. It's not your time yet to stay here." So I went back again. Of course, I didn't tell anybody about this type of experience. Now, the funny thing is that why I have to go up a different levels. I was sleeping. What place that was? There is another dimension beside the one that we are living here today. There is a different levels of consciousness. Did you feel this before? Have you been to places like this and you don't know what it is, but you can feel it? You can actually live there with feelings and emotions, and it's so unusual. Okay, this one thing. And I grew up, I liked a lot of playing since I came to a family that we had enough to eat and to dress, had our own house and so on, but my dad used to work a lot, and my mother too, taking care, as I said, 4 children plus a husband and plus a whole house to clean and feed, fix food for everybody and wash clothes that time by hand. Anyway, and the time went by. But one time I started studying on a school, technical school here in Londrina, and I couldn't understand when the teacher was telling me about mathematics. The way he trying to explain was not the way that I understood. Believe me, no, I'm not saying that I am a dumb person. No, I am saying that the way they explain math, for some reason, I had a different line of thinking about math. But I have to confirm with the idea that the way they used to teach math. Okay, one day I said, okay, I give up. I'm going to study like the way we are supposed to do in here. The school was a technical school, and I used to do my project faster than any other child. I was a youngster already, a teenage type, because I started with 15 years old until 18, was 3 years this course. And then I started making a special project beside the ones that normally the curriculum of the school would ask for. So I would do it faster than the other one, so I would have a time to work on my own personal project, which was very different type, but all the time involved with the so-called mechanical things. Now, one day I remember on a drafting class, I said to myself, boy, imagine if we would have a machine to draw the lines, circle, squares, everything else in a way that we will give orders to it and they would draw it for us. Imagine? Could that thing be like a computer? It looks like that I was thinking about a computer, wasn't it? Now, I started having some very unusual thoughts. Okay, I graduated from the school and I went to work in a regular job. And also I was studying at night because I want to be a mechanical engineer. But since I was very popular in the school and I used to take part most of the time on team inside of the class, groups. I used to sing a lot and I was called to be a singer for different occasions and talk with people. I have not done a theater, okay? But I used to sing a lot and used to have even a band of my own as I was growing up. And one thing happened. The school called me back to be a teacher. We don't say teacher, we say instructor. So I came back after 1 year out of the school. Now imagine the shock. I was giving classes to people that used to be my buddies in different levels of the year, and they couldn't understand what was going on because all of a sudden I became a teacher. Now the funny part was the fact that I used to give classes on Saturdays, so we used to have from Monday to Fridays, but somehow I felt the desire to teach my students one more class, like you come in here and we will do project that you want to do, so each one will have their own personal project, which was something that I used to do before, but it was not a class type thing. Now, do you believe that all the classes start seeing what was going on and they want to be part of the class too? The other kids from different classes want to come to Saturdays and play and do project. Anyway, it was a very unusual situation, which was delightful. And one day I was studying at night. My brother, my older brother, came in with a friend of mine, which was an instructor too, and said, listen, let's go to the Hotel X here in Londrina because Mr. So-and-so is there and want to talk to you. I was very scared because this man was a very powerful person on a whole group of his school. He was one of the top. He was not the full director, but he was the second in command. So I went there and he looked at me in the face and said, do you remember when I used to ask you to come to Curitiba? Curitiba is the capital of my state. For you to be a teacher over there, and you said no, because I was going to do the same kind of a program that I used to do in here. And I said, why I used to go to Curitiba since I am doing already the project right here? But he said, no, this time is different. You are going to go to São Paulo, which is the big city in Brazil, and everybody in the world knows São Paulo, which is one of the, I presume to be the third biggest city in the world, third or fourth. Okay. And he said, you must answer now, yes or no, if you are going to go there. And I had to say yes, of course. Anyway, this means that I used to live in Londrina. I had to move to São Paulo, and São Paulo make a special upgrading school, a higher level. I would say that like a, not a PhD, because this was not the idea, but was an upgrade, a master, type master, in the same idea. But this time I had to work with 32 new machine that came from Europe. So I had to work with this machine, understand the whole process, how to work with it, right? Because I was going to be the first teacher in the state of Paraná in tool and die making. And when I arrived there, I knew that tool and die making was not enough. So I started taking all the courses beside the tool and die making, which was the project of the products that any company would have. But beside of this, I need to have a full brand new school under my belt. I had to learn the whole process, how I would have a full school from the ground up, and this was to be done by me. I had what they call carte blanche to do it, because I was going to study specifically to do that. So I studied from 3 o'clock in the morning to 8:30 at night, including Saturday. And then something happened on this time when I was already in São Paulo. First was an experience that, oh boy, it was something abnormal, because the first thing was the first time that I was out of my house, living in a different area, living with different people, having a different environment to cope with. And the most interesting thing was the fact that I was macrobiotic at that time. I was a macrobiotic at that time, and I used to do yoga, okay? So I came back home around 11:30. I took a shower, and I was lying down on a carpet in my room doing the exercises. And then after that, I used to have a little time for myself to meditate. But prior to go to a meditation stuff, I was just relaxing there, and I was facing a wardrobe, which in Brazil we call guarda-roupa. Is where you normally put the clothes in a hanger and you put it there. And I was looking up, and all of a sudden I realized was a small individual on the top of that wardrobe with their hands like this, and the legs was shaking like a child was on the swing. Imagine a being which looked like a small child on the top of the wardrobe, their hands like this, looking down to me on the carpet, and the legs like this. And he said to me, "Let's go." I said, "Yes, let's go." And that took me to the most incredible trip that next time I will tell you all about. I hope you enjoy a little bit of my growing up experience, because I'm gonna tell you things that probably you have been through and not had the opportunity to speak with anybody about this. And you will see the way I will be telling you, say, hey, this stuff could happen with me also. Happen with me. Oh, now I know what he's talking about. Okay? So I see you on the next video. Have a good time. Always have a good time, and I see you around.